I'm Carlene, 35, sitting in that five-star restaurant when my father slammed his fist on the table and disowned me. The white tablecloth rippled, wine glasses trembled, and my world collapsed. That moment of rejection became the foundation of my greatest achievement. 5 years later, my tech company hit $100 million, leaving my family in shock. But success tastes different when those who should have believed in you first believe in you last. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had someone underestimate your potential. Trust me, this story of rejection to success will be worth every minute. My family always had a clear hierarchy. At the top was my father, Howard Armstrong, a successful real estate developer known for his ruthless business tactics and traditional values. His word was law in our household, a sprawling mansion in Connecticut, with more rooms than we needed, but perfect for showcasing his success. My mother, Sarah, existed in his shadow. Once an ambitious marketing executive, she gave up her career when they married to become the perfect corporate wife and mother. She managed our home with military precision, hosted flawless dinner parties, and never contradicted my father in public or private. Her smile became practiced, her opinions carefully aligned with his. I watched her personality slowly disappear over the years, replaced by a reflection of what Howard wanted. Then came my older brother Jackson, the golden child, an heir apparent to the Armstrong legacy. 4 years my senior, he mirrored our father in ambition and temperament. He attended the same prestigious business school, joined the family company straight after graduation, and quickly rose through the ranks despite his young age. My father beamed with pride whenever Jackson closed a deal or brought home another trophy girlfriend from the right social circle. I completed the family portrait as the daughter who never quite fit the frame. From an early age, I was drawn to computers rather than dolls. While Jackson played golf with Dad, I took apart our home computer and reassembled it with improved processing speed. My father called it tinkering, with dismissive amusement, as if my interest in technology was a phase I would outgrow. "Carlene, why waste time with those gadgets?" he would ask during dinner. "Pretty girls don't need to understand how computers work. That's what the IT guys are for." My mother would nod in agreement, suggesting I focus more on activities that would help me find a suitable husband. Their vision for my future was clear: attend a good college not for education, but for finding a wealthy husband, preferably from a family with business connections. Then settle into a life of charity galas and children supporting my husband, as my mother supported my father. The only person who encouraged my interests was my grandmother Dorothy, my mother's mother. A widow who had supported herself as a librarian, she visited every Sunday and always brought me books about female scientists and inventors. During these visits, she would sit in my room while I showed her my latest coding project or tech experiment. "Your mind is a gift, Carlene," she would tell me. "Never let anyone convince you to hide it." She spoke these words softly, glancing occasionally at my bedroom door, as if afraid of being overheard. As I entered high school, the expectations grew more intense. Every achievement was measured against the Armstrong standard. My straight A's were expected, not celebrated. When I won the state science competition with a program I coded that helps small businesses manage inventory, my father's response was, "That's nice, dear, but is it something colleges care about?" The same week, Jackson made the varsity basketball team, and my parents threw a party. Dinner times became battlegrounds of subtle disapproval. Every conversation circled back to my future and the narrow path my parents had chosen for me. "The Williamsons' daughter just got engaged to a Thompson boy," my mother would mention casually. "Their families have known each other forever. They're planning a June wedding at the country club." My father would add, "Smart girl. She's securing her future. That's what sensible young women do." I endured these conversations silently, pushing food around my plate, while Jackson smirked from across the table. When college application season arrived, the tension reached breaking point. My father handed me a list of 5 universities known for their social connections, rather than academic excellence. Schools where, as he put it, "you'll meet the right kind of people." That night, I stayed up completing applications to top computer science programs instead. I hid the acceptance letters when they arrived, but eventually had to confess when tuition deadlines approached. "Massachusetts Institute of Technology." My father's face reddened as he read my acceptance letter. "What do you plan to do with a computer science degree? This isn't what we discussed." I want to work in technology, Dad. Create something meaningful. Women don't create tech companies, Carlene. They marry the men who do. He tore the letter in half. You're throwing away your potential on a silly fantasy. That night, my grandmother called. Somehow she had heard about my acceptance. Your grandfather left me some money when he passed, she said. Not much, but enough for your first year's tuition. After that, there are scholarships, loans, work-study programs. The next morning, I told my parents I would attend MIT with or without their support. My father didn't speak to me for a week. When he finally did, it was to inform me that he would pay my tuition to avoid the embarrassment of student loans in the family, but that I was making a grave mistake. My mother pulled me aside later. Just humor him for now, she whispered. Get the degree, then come home and settle down. It's easier that way. But I knew as I packed for college that I was taking the first step on a different path, one that would either lead me to independence or estrangement from my family. What I didn't realize was that it would eventually lead to both. 4 years later, I graduated from MIT with highest honors in computer science. The ceremony was brief, the weather perfect, and my family predictably disappointed. They attended out of obligation. My father checking his watch throughout the proceedings, my mother taking photos she would never show to friends, and Jackson scrolling through his phone. Well, that's done, my father said as we gathered outside the auditorium. I've arranged an interview for you at Armstrong Developments next week. Nothing too technical, just a marketing role where your knowledge of computers might be useful. Tom in HR knows to expect you. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Actually, Dad, I've already accepted a position. His eyebrows shot up. With whom? Nexus Technologies. They're a startup working on innovative security solutions. A startup. He spat the word like it tasted foul. Those fly-by-night operations that disappear within a year. What's the salary? It was significantly less than what I would earn at Armstrong Developments, and his laugh when I told him confirmed his opinion of my decision. You spent 4 years at one of the most expensive universities in the country to earn poverty wages at a company no one's heard of. This is exactly why I didn't want you pursuing this field. It's about the experience, not the starting salary, I tried to explain. Nexus is doing groundbreaking work in data security. Experience won't pay your rent or build a future, he countered. This rebellious phase needs to end, Carlene. When this startup inevitably fails, don't expect me to find you another position at my company. But Nexus didn't fail. In fact, it thrived, securing several rounds of funding and expanding rapidly. I started as a junior developer, but quickly proved my worth. Within 18 months, I was leading my own team developing security protocols for financial applications. The hours were long, the work challenging. But for the first time in my life, I felt valued for my mind. It was at Nexus that I met Gabriel Martinez, a brilliant programmer who became my mentor and friend. 10 years my senior, Gabriel had worked at several major tech companies before joining Nexus to build something that matters. We often stayed late ordering takeout and discussing the future of data security. During one of these sessions, the idea that would change my life emerged. Small and medium businesses are completely vulnerable to data breaches, Gabriel remarked. The big security firms only target enterprise clients, and the affordable solutions are basically digital snake oil. What if we created something specifically for them? I suggested. Something affordable but actually effective. The market exists, Gabriel agreed, but the approach would need to be completely different from enterprise solutions. Simpler interface, lower overhead automated responses for companies without dedicated IT departments. That conversation planted a seed. I began researching the market, spending evenings and weekends developing a prototype. I opened a separate savings account, living frugally and depositing whatever I could spare for my modest salary. Meanwhile, my relationship with my family deteriorated further. Monthly family dinners became exercises in endurance. Jackson had been promoted to vice president at Armstrong Developments and recently closed a $20 million commercial property deal. These accomplishments dominated every conversation. Jackson has a natural instinct for this business, my father would boast. He sees opportunities others miss. My mother would add, and he's dating Amanda Phillips now. Her father owns Phillips Construction. Such a lovely girl from a good family. When they eventually remembered my existence, the questions were always the same. "Still at that startup, Carlene?" My father would ask, not waiting for an answer. "When are you going to get serious about your future? You're not getting any younger, you know." "Jennifer's daughter is engaged now," my mother would chime in. "She only graduated last year." After one particularly difficult dinner, Gabriel noticed my despondent mood at work the next day. When I explained about my family, he shared his own experience. "My father wanted me to take over his restaurant," he told me. "He didn't speak to me for 2 years after I chose programming instead. Now he brags about me to his customers. Sometimes people can't see your vision until you've already built it." His words strengthened my resolve. 6 months later, I had a working prototype of my security platform and a business plan. When Gabriel left Nexus for a position at Google, he encouraged me to pursue my idea full-time. "This could be something big, Carlene," he said during our goodbye lunch. "Don't wait until someone else builds it." That night, I drafted my resignation letter. Looking around my small apartment, I calculated my savings, the months of runway I had before money would become critical. It wasn't much, but perhaps it was enough to start. The hardest road I was beginning to understand was often the right one. The leap from employee to entrepreneur felt like stepping off a cliff with no guarantee of a soft landing. My resignation from Nexus was met with surprise and counteroffers, but my mind was made up. I had named my future company Secure Bridge, reflecting my vision to bridge the security gap for small to medium businesses. My first task was securing initial funding. I compiled market research, refined my business plan, and practiced my pitch until I could recite it in my sleep. Armed with my prototype and boundless determination, I approached angel investors and small venture capital firms specializing in security startups. The rejections accumulated quickly. "The market is too niche. The big players will crush you if this shows potential. Come back when you have paying customers." Each dismissal stung, but also hardened my resolve. After 2 months of closed doors, my savings dwindling faster than anticipated, I made the difficult decision to approach my father. Perhaps seeing my detailed plans and prototype would convince him of my seriousness. I scheduled a meeting through his assistant, who sounded surprised to hear my voice. Howard Armstrong kept me waiting in his reception area for 45 minutes beyond our appointment time. When finally admitted to his corner office with its sweeping views of the city, he remained seated behind his imposing desk, barely looking up from his papers. "I have a board meeting in 20 minutes, he said by way of greeting. "What's so urgent?" I presented my business plan, explaining the gap in the market and how Secure Bridge would fill it. I demonstrated the prototype on my laptop, walking him through its features and potential. As I spoke, his expression remained impassive, offering no clue to his thoughts. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair. "How much are you looking for?" Hope flickered. 200,000 for initial development and marketing. With that investment, I project breaking even within 18 months. He laughed, not the warm laugh of a proud father, but the dismissive chuckle he reserved for ideas he considered absurd. "Carlene, if I had $1 for every tech entrepreneur who thought they had the next big thing, I'd double my net worth. This security business is dominated by established players with deep pockets." "But they're ignoring smaller businesses," I insisted. "That's the opportunity. They're ignoring it because the margins are too thin to be worthwhile." He closed my business plan without reading beyond the executive summary. "Here's my advice, and I don't give it lightly. Go back to Nexus or apply to a larger tech company if you must pursue this computer fascination. Build a stable career, meet a suitable man, preferably someone with actual business acumen, and stop chasing these fantasies." My throat tightened. This isn't a fantasy. This is a viable business with real market potential. "No, this is you trying to prove something to me, to yourself, I don't know." He checked his watch. "I built Armstrong Developments from nothing into a $200 million company. I know what it takes to succeed in business, and frankly, you don't have it." "You won't even consider investing?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I won't throw good money after bad, even for my daughter, especially when that money could go toward Jackson's new development project, which will actually generate returns." He stood, indicating our meeting was over. "This is for your own good, Carlene. The business world would chew you up and spit you out. Find a good man who can take care of you. That's where your talents would be better applied." I left his office with burning cheeks and unshed tears. The security guard in the lobby asked if I was okay, and I nodded automatically, unable to speak. In my car, the tears finally came hot and angry. I had known this would likely be the outcome, yet the reality of his dismissal cut deeper than I had anticipated. After allowing myself that moment of weakness, I dried my tears and recalibrated my plan. If family support wasn't an option, I would find another way. I sold my car, took out a personal loan using my apartment as collateral, and maxed out 2 credit cards to scrape together $80,000. It wasn't the $200,000 I needed, but it would have to be enough to start. At a tech networking event the following week, I met Renee Washington, a marketing specialist, who had helped launch several successful startups. When I described Secure Bridge, she immediately grasped its potential. Small business security is a massive untapped market, she agreed. They're desperate for solutions but can't afford enterprise-level protection. By the end of the evening, Renee had agreed to join SecureBridge as co-founder and marketing director, in exchange for equity, bringing her expertise and contacts to the venture. With her connections, we secured a small angel investment of $50,000 from a former client impressed with her previous successes. We transformed my apartment into our headquarters, the living room filled with whiteboards and computer equipment. We hired 2 junior developers, part-time, brilliant recent graduates, willing to work for equity and modest salaries. Our product took shape, an affordable, user-friendly platform that monitored network security, detected unusual patterns, and responded automatically to potential threats. Unlike complex enterprise solutions, Secure Bridge required minimal technical knowledge to install and maintain, perfect for businesses without dedicated IT departments. After 4 months of intense development, we launched a beta version to 20 small businesses in various industries. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with several requesting the full version before the beta period ended. On the day we signed our first paying customer, a local accounting firm, Renee brought champagne to the apartment. As we toasted our modest success, my phone rang. It was my mother inviting me to a family dinner to celebrate Jackson's latest achievement, a $30 million deal with an international investor. "Your father thinks it would be nice if you were there," she added, her tone suggesting this was more command than request. I agreed to attend, thinking perhaps I could share my own small victory with my family. After hanging up, Renee noticed my expression. "Family dinner," she guessed. I nodded. "My brother closed a big deal." "And will you tell them about our progress?" "I'm going to try," I said, though the knot in my stomach suggested I already knew how that would go. The restaurant my father selected for the celebration dinner was exactly his style, exclusive, expensive, and designed to impress. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, white linen draped over the tables, and a pianist played softly in the corner, the kind of place where the menu had no prices listed on the women's versions. I arrived 15 minutes early, took a deep breath in the parking lot, and checked my reflection in the car window. I'd chosen a simple black dress, professional, but not showy. My dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, my makeup minimal. I wanted to look successful, but not as if I were trying too hard. Success on my terms, not theirs. The maitre d' led me to our table, where my mother was already seated, alone, nervously rearranging her silverware. "Carlene, you look thin," she said by way of greeting. "Are you eating properly?" "I'm fine, Mom, just busy with the company." I took my seat across from her. "How have you been?" Before she could answer, my father and Jackson arrived together, deep in conversation about their recent deal. Howard Armstrong cut an imposing figure in his tailored suit, still handsome at 60, with silver hair and the confident bearing of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Jackson at 39 was his younger duplicate, down to the designer watch and practiced smile. "Carlene," my father acknowledged with a nod before taking his seat at the head of the table. Jackson gave me a brief half hug before sitting beside our father, completing the family hierarchy in physical form. "You're looking well," Jackson said, his tone suggesting surprise. A waiter appeared with champagne, pouring glasses for everyone without asking. My father raised his glass. "To Jackson and the Singapore Tower project, $30 million and the largest deal in Armstrong Development's history. This project will put us on the international map." We clinked glasses. I took a sip while my father launched into a detailed account of the deal, how Jackson had wooed the investors, the projected returns. My mother listened with practiced interest, asking questions at appropriate intervals. I tried to look engaged while my mind drifted to my own small triumph, wondering if there would be an opportunity to share it. The Phillips family was instrumental in securing the construction contracts, Jackson added. Mr. Phillips has been very supportive, especially since Amanda and I. They've set a date, my mother interrupted, unable to contain her excitement. June wedding at the Westbrook Country Club. 300 guests. The Phillips and Armstrong families united at last. Congratulations, I said, genuinely happy for my brother despite our complicated relationship. Amanda seems lovely. I had met her briefly at a previous family function, a willowy blonde with impeccable social credentials and a degree in art history she had never used. Thank you, Jackson replied, looking pleased. Actually, Amanda was hoping you'd be a bridesmaid, for family unity and all that. Before I could respond, my father interjected. Speaking of unions beneficial to the family, Thomas Blackwell has been asking about you, Carlene. Thomas Blackwell? The name sounded vaguely familiar. Richard Blackwell's son, my father explained. Harvard Business School now running their East Coast operations. Recently divorced, no children. Richard and I have been discussing potential collaborations, and your name came up. The implication was clear. I set down my champagne glass carefully. I'm not interested in being set up, Dad. I'm focused on my company right now. Still playing with that security program? Jackson asked. I thought you'd have moved on by now. Secure Bridge is not a game, I said evenly. We just signed our first major client and have 15 more in the pipeline. We're projecting to break even ahead of schedule. My mother looked confused. You mean that startup thing you were doing in your apartment? You're still working on that? It's not just a project anymore. It's a real company with paying customers and growing demand. My father waved dismissively. A few small clients is hardly a business. What's your annual revenue? 50,000, 100 Jackson's deal will generate millions in fees alone. We're just starting, I acknowledged, but our growth projections are strong. There's a real gap in the market for affordable, user-friendly security solutions for small businesses. There's a gap because there's no money in it, my father declared. Real businesses focus on clients who can pay real money. Small businesses represent over 90% of all companies in America, I countered. They deserve protection too, and they're willing to pay for it if the solution is right. The waiter arrived with appetizers, temporarily halting the conversation. When he left, my mother quickly steered the topic back to safer territory. The Phillips have reserved the entire east wing of the Westbrook for out-of-town guests. The flowers will be white roses and lilies, Amanda's favorites. But my father wasn't finished. Thomas Blackwell is a serious prospect, Carlene. Exactly the kind of connection that could secure your future. I've invited him to join us for dessert. You did what? I set down my fork. He happened to be dining here tonight with clients. I texted him our table number. My father looked pleased with himself. He'll join us later. I didn't agree to this, I said, my voice tight. You're 35, unmarried, pursuing this hobby business instead of a real career. Someone needs to take your future in hand since you refuse to. My future is my decision, I said, feeling heat rise to my face. And Secure Bridge is not a hobby. It's a legitimate business that I built from scratch without any help from you, despite your constant discouragement. Jackson snorted. Built from scratch? You have, 3 employees working out of your apartment. That's not a real company, Carlene. That's playing pretend. Every company starts somewhere, I replied. Even Armstrong Developments was small once. The difference, my father cut in, is that I had a viable business model with serious investors from day one. I wasn't chasing some pipe dream about saving small businesses from imaginary threats. The threats aren't imaginary. Small businesses lose millions annually to data breaches because they can't afford enterprise-level security. We're solving a real problem. The real problem, my father said, his voice rising, is your stubborn refusal to accept reality. Women don't build tech companies. They certainly don't succeed in male-dominated fields like cybersecurity. You're wasting your potential on this fantasy when you could be building a real life with a suitable partner. The restaurant seemed to grow quieter, as if nearby tables were listening to our conversation. My mother looked around nervously. Howard, perhaps we should discuss this at home, she suggested. No, Sarah, this needs to be said. He turned back to me. I've indulged this rebellion long enough. It's time to grow up and accept your place in this family. Either you end this startup nonsense and take a proper position at Armstrong Developments, Or you pursue a relationship with Thomas Blackwell or someone similar. Those are your options if you want to remain part of this family. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. I looked at my father's stern face, my mother's anxious expression, Jackson's smug smile. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what acceptance of their terms would mean a life of compromise and quiet desperation, just like my mother's. Those aren't my only options, I said quietly. Excuse me. My father's eyebrows shot up. I said those aren't my only options. I can continue building my company my way without your approval or support. I've done it this far. This isn't a negotiation, Carlene. I'm telling you how things will be. No, Dad, you're telling me how you want things to be. But I'm an adult making my own choices. His face reddened. Choices that dishonor this family and waste your education. Choices that will lead to failure and embarrassment. If I fail, it will be my failure. But I deserve the chance to try without constant undermining from my own family. Enough. He slammed his hand on the table, causing glasses to rattle, and nearby diners to turn their heads. I've heard enough of this disrespect and delusion. You have a choice to make right now. Your family or this ridiculous tech fantasy. Howard, my mother pleaded, please not here, but he was beyond listening. Choose Carlene, now. I looked around the table one last time at the family that had never supported my dreams or believed in my abilities. My voice was steady when I answered. I choose my company. I choose my independence. I choose to believe in myself even if you never will. My father's face contorted with anger. Then you are no longer my daughter. I disown you here and now. Don't call, don't visit, don't expect anything from this family ever again. You're on your own. A hush fell over the restaurant. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Jackson stared, his smug expression replaced by shock. Even he hadn't expected this escalation. I stood slowly, my legs trembling but my resolve firm. I've been on my own since the day I decided to follow my own path instead of yours. The only difference now is that we're both acknowledging it. I placed my napkin on the table, picked up my purse, and walked away without looking back. As I passed the maitre d' stand, a man in a blue suit approached looking uncertain. Excuse me, are you Carlene Armstrong? I'm Thomas Blackwell. I was supposed to join your family for dessert. I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell, dinner's been canceled, I said, continuing toward the exit. Family emergency. In my car, the magnitude of what had just occurred hit me. My father had disowned me publicly. My family ties were severed. I was truly alone now, with only my fledgling company and uncertain future. Tears threatened, but I blinked them back, started the engine, and drove away from the restaurant, away from my past, and toward whatever future I could build for myself. The weeks following that fateful dinner passed in a blur of focused work and emotional compartmentalization. I channeled all my pain and anger into Secure Bridge, working 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Sleep became a luxury, meals were often forgotten, and my small apartment transformed into a war room of strategic planning and product development. Renee noticed the change in my intensity, but didn't immediately comment. 3 weeks after the dinner, she finally confronted me while we were working late. You're going to burn out at this pace, she said, closing my laptop mid-task. What happened with your family? I hadn't told her about being disowned, too ashamed and hurt to articulate it. But in that moment, the dam broke. I told her everything. The ultimatum, my father's public rejection, the complete severing of family ties. Instead of offering pity, Renee nodded thoughtfully. So basically, they've removed all your safety nets. That's one way to put it. Good, she said, surprising me. Now you have nothing to lose and everything to prove. The most dangerous competitor is the one with nothing to lose. Her perspective shifted something inside me. She was right. My father's rejection, while painful, had also freed me from seeking his approval. There was liberation in that severance. The next morning, we mapped out an aggressive growth strategy. If Secure Bridge was going to succeed, we needed more capital, more visibility, and more customers. We compiled a list of tech conferences and networking events, divided them between us, and prepared to take our product to a wider audience. At a small cybersecurity conference in Boston, I delivered a presentation on the vulnerability of small businesses to data breaches. After my talk, a woman approached me, introduced herself as Maya Rodriguez, and asked detailed questions about our platform. I assumed she was a potential client until she handed me her card. Maya Rodriguez, angel investor, specializing in women-led tech startups. I'd like to hear more about SecureBridge, she said. Are you seeking investment? Over coffee the next day, I pitched SecureBridge more formally. Maya listened intently, asking pointed questions about our technology market strategy and competitive advantage. When I finished, she sat back and studied me for a moment. Why this business, Carlene? What drives you? The question caught me off guard. Most investors wanted to hear about market size and profit margins, not personal motivation. I considered giving a safe, rehearsed answer about market opportunity, but something about Maya's direct gaze encouraged honesty. Small businesses are vulnerable because they're overlooked, I said. Everyone assumes they're not worth protecting because individually they're not big enough. But collectively, they're the backbone of our economy. I know what it feels like to be underestimated and dismissed. I won't do that to them. Maya nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. I'm prepared to offer $500,000 for a 15% equity stake in SecureBridge. The figure stunned me. It was more than I had hoped for and would provide enough runway to hire more developers and move into proper office space. Why? I asked, unable to hide my surprise. Other investors thought our market was too niche. Other investors lack imagination, Maya replied simply. I've made my fortune betting on overlooked markets and underestimated founders, particularly women in tech. Your combination of technical expertise and personal motivation is compelling. Plus, your prototype is more advanced than you realize. With Maya's investment, SecureBridge entered a new phase. We leased a small office space in Cambridge, hired 3 full-time developers, and a customer support specialist. Renee expanded our marketing efforts targeting industry-specific small business associations and chambers of commerce. Our breakthrough came unexpectedly. A series of ransomware attacks hit small accounting firms across the Northeast, encrypting their client data and demanding payment for its release. The attacks made regional news, creating widespread panic among similar businesses. One of our beta clients, Johnson Accounting, was among the targeted firms, but escaped unscathed thanks to SecureBridge's early detection and automated response system. The firm's owner, grateful and impressed, gave interviews crediting our software for saving his business. The publicity generated a flood of inquiries. Renee, always quick to capitalize on opportunity, organized a webinar titled Ransomware Protection for Small Businesses that attracted over 500 participants. Our customer base grew exponentially. Within 6 months of Maya's investment, we had over 200 paying clients and a waiting list for implementations. Our team expanded to 15 people, and we moved to a larger office to accommodate the growth. TechCrunch published a feature article about SecureBridge, highlighting our focus on the underserved small business market. The article caught the attention of venture capital firms specializing in cybersecurity. Suddenly, the investors who had previously dismissed us were calling, requesting meetings. After careful consideration and consultation with Maya, we accepted a Series A investment of $5 million from Blue Shield Ventures, maintaining majority control of the company. The funding allowed us to accelerate product development, expand our sales team, and begin exploring international markets. As CEO, I was invited to speak at major tech conferences, sharing our vision of democratizing cybersecurity. Each appearance generated more interest, more customers, more validation of our business model. The niche market others had dismissed was proving to be vast and eager for our solution. 3 years after that devastating dinner where my father disowned me, SecureBridge had grown to 70 employees with offices in Boston, Austin, and Toronto. Our annual revenue exceeded $20 million, and our company valuation reached $50 million. The crowning validation came when I was named Female Technology Entrepreneur of the Year by a prestigious business magazine. The award ceremony was held in New York, attended by tech industry leaders and investors. As I accepted the glass trophy and gave my speech thanking my team, I couldn't help but wonder if my family knew of my success. I had my answer the following week, when Renee forwarded me an article from a business journal. Armstrong Developments was facing financial difficulties following a failed international venture. The Singapore Tower project that Jackson had championed had encountered regulatory issues and massive cost overruns. The company had been forced to write off a significant investment, impacting its overall financial stability. I felt no satisfaction at the news, only a strange emptiness. Success without anyone to share it with felt hollow sometimes, despite the professional recognition. That night, I called my grandmother Dorothy, the only family member I still had contact with. She had moved to a retirement community in Florida, but remained sharp and engaged. "I saw your award in the business section," she said proudly. "My granddaughter, the tech mogul. I've been telling everyone here." "Thanks, Grandma. I wish you could have been there." "I'm there in spirit, dear." She paused. "Have you heard about your father's company?" "I read something about financial trouble," I admitted. "It's worse than the papers say," she confided. "Sarah called me yesterday. She's worried sick. Howard refuses to acknowledge how bad things are. His pride, you know." I did know. That same pride that had led him to disown his daughter, rather than admit he might be wrong. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, meaning it, despite everything. I didn't want my family to suffer. "Life has a way of balancing accounts," my grandmother said softly. "You built something extraordinary from nothing. Howard may lose everything he built because he couldn't adapt. There's a lesson there." After our call, I sat on my balcony overlooking the Boston skyline, contemplating the strange turns my life had taken. From family rejection to industry recognition in 3 years. From working in my apartment to leading a company valued at $50 million. The next stage of growth would be even more challenging. We had proved the concept and captured initial market share. Now we needed to scale globally while defending against larger competitors who had finally recognized the market opportunity we had pioneered. The road ahead would require all my focus and energy. Yet something kept pulling me back to thoughts of my family. Not longing for reconciliation exactly, but a need for resolution. The wound of that dinner had scarred over but never fully healed. Perhaps it never would until I confronted it directly. Little did I know that opportunity would come sooner than expected, and in a form I could never have anticipated. 2 more years passed in a whirlwind of growth and expansion. Secure Bridge evolved from a promising startup into an established cybersecurity leader for the small to medium business market. Our customer base grew to over 20,000 businesses across North America and Europe. Our team expanded to 200 employees across 5 offices. Most significantly, our company valuation hit $100 million following a successful Series B funding round. The financial milestone made headlines in tech and business publications, with Forbes featuring Secure Bridge in an article titled, "The $100 million Security Solution No One Saw Coming." The morning the article was published, I sat in my corner office in our Boston headquarters, staring at my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. At 35, I had achieved more professional success than I had ever imagined possible. Secure Bridge was no longer just my company. It was an industry force respected and valued. The validation was sweet, but something was still missing. Renee knocked on my door, interrupting my thoughts. Now, our chief marketing officer, she had been with me from the beginning. A true partner in building Secure Bridge. "The Forbes piece is generating huge buzz," she reported. "Interview requests are pouring in. CNBC wants you for a segment tomorrow. Also, the photographer from Business Week is here for your cover shoot." I nodded, trying to focus on these tangible measures of success. "Schedule whatever you think is important. I trust your judgment." Renee tilted her head, studying me. After 5 years of working together, she could read my moods. "This should be the happiest day of your career. We hit a 9-figure valuation. Why do you look like someone died?" "Just thinking about the journey," I said. "How unlikely all this was." "You mean how everyone underestimated you and now has to eat crow, including your family?" I hadn't told many people about being disowned, but Renee knew everything. She had been there through the darkest moments, the nights of doubt, the exhaustion, and fear. "I wonder if they've seen the Forbes article," I admitted. "Do you care?" "I shouldn't," I acknowledged. "But part of me wants them to know they were wrong. Not for revenge, just validation," Renee finished. "Perfectly human. Now come on, smile for the cameras and show the world what a $100 million CEO looks like." The day progressed with interviews, the photo shoot, and meetings with our executive team to plan our next expansion phase. I maintained my professional demeanor throughout, but Renee's question lingered in my mind. Did I care what my family thought of my success? The answer came that evening in the form of an email from my mother, the first contact in 5 years. The subject line read simply, "Please read." My finger hovered over the delete button before curiosity won out. The message was brief. "Carlene, I saw the article about your company. I always knew you were smart, but I never imagined this. Things are difficult here. Your father had a minor stroke last week. The company is in serious trouble. Jackson made some poor decisions with the Singapore project. Please call me. Mom." No congratulations, no apology, for years of silence, just a veiled request for help wrapped in a health crisis. My first instinct was anger, then bitter amusement. Of course they would reach out now when they needed something. I closed the email without responding and tried to focus on reviewing quarterly projections, but my concentration was broken. After an hour of distraction, I gave up, grabbed my coat, and headed to the one person who might offer perspective. My grandmother Dorothy had moved back to Massachusetts last year to be closer to her doctors. At 82, her health was declining, but her mind remained sharp. I visited her assisted living facility at least once a month more when my schedule allowed. She welcomed me with a warm hug, immediately noticing my troubled expression. "What's wrong, dear? You should be celebrating today. I saw the Forbes article. 100 million. I showed her the email from my mother. Dorothy read it slowly, then removed her reading glasses with a sigh. "Sarah never did know how to apologize properly," she commented. "But this is the closest she's come to reaching out in 5 years. They're only contacting me because they need something," I said, the hurt evident in my voice, "not because they're proud or sorry." "Pride makes fools of us all," Dorothy replied. "Howard's especially. The question isn't why they're reaching out, but what you'll do about it." "What would you do?" I asked. She considered this carefully. "I would do whatever allows me to sleep at night. Not what they deserve, not what society expects, but what my heart can live with." "You've proven everything you needed to prove, Carlene. Your success speaks for itself. Now decide what kind of person you want to be in victory." Her wisdom has always cut through my confusion. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The choice was simpler: could I ignore my family in crisis regardless of our past? The next day I called the hospital where my father was recovering and arranged to visit. As I drove there, memories of our last encounter flooded back. The public disowning, the ultimatum, the years of dismissal and disrespect. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I fought the urge to turn around. The hospital room was private, befitting Howard Armstrong's status, though that status had diminished considerably according to recent business news. My mother was sitting beside his bed when I arrived, aged beyond her years, her once perfect appearance now haggard with worry. "Carlene," she whispered, rising unsteadily. "You came." "I came to see how Dad is doing," I clarified, not ready for a warm reunion. My father looked smaller somehow, diminished by illness and stress. His hair was thinner, his face lined with age and worry. When he saw me, his eyes widened in surprise. "What are you doing here?" His voice was weaker, but the authoritarian tone remained. "I heard you were ill," I replied neutrally. "I wanted to see how you were recovering." "We don't need your pity," he said, though the force of his former personality was muted. "Howard, please," my mother pleaded. "Carlene came to help." "I didn't say that," I corrected. "I came to check on Dad's health. That's all." An uncomfortable silence filled the room. My mother looked desperately between us as if hoping for a miraculous reconciliation. My father stared at the wall, his pride still intact despite his circumstances. The door opened and Jackson entered, stopping short when he saw me. He too showed the strain of recent years, his formerly confident bearing now tentative. "Carlene," he said, genuine surprise in his voice. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Just a brief visit," I replied. "How are things, Jackson?" He glanced at our parents, then back at me. "Could we talk outside?" In the hallway, Jackson ran a hand through his thinning hair, a gesture reminiscent of our father. "I assume Mom contacted you." "She sent an email mentioning Dad's stroke and some business difficulties." He laughed without humor. "Difficulties is an understatement. The company is on the verge of bankruptcy. The Singapore project was a disaster. Cost overruns, regulatory issues, corrupt officials demanding bribes. We're facing lawsuits from investors. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it despite our complicated history. Jackson studied me for a moment. I saw the Forbes article. $100 million valuation. Quite an achievement for a hobby business. The reference to our last dinner made me tense, but his tone lacked the former condescension. Secure Bridge filled a market need that everyone else overlooked, I said simply. Including me, he acknowledged. I was wrong about you, Carlene. We all were. I should have supported your vision instead of undermining it. The admission stunned me. Jackson had never admitted being wrong about anything. Why the change of heart? He leaned against the wall, suddenly looking exhausted. Failure has a way of clarifying perspective. Everything I was so sure about proved wrong. Everything Dad taught me about business led to disaster. Meanwhile, you succeeded against all odds without any support. It wasn't easy, I admitted. That makes it more impressive. He hesitated. The truth is, I was jealous. You had the courage to follow your own path. I just did what was expected, what was safe. Safe didn't work out so well, I observed. No, it didn't. He glanced toward our father's room. He's not doing well, Carlene. The stroke was mild, but the doctors are concerned about his heart. The stress of the company's collapse is killing him, but he refuses to accept reality. What about Mom? She's lost everything that defined her identity. Her social standing, her security. She's been trying to reach you for months, but didn't know how. I absorbed this information, trying to reconcile my successful present with this broken version of my former family. What do you want from me, Jackson? He straightened, meeting my eyes directly. Nothing you don't want to give. Not money, not a bailout for the company. Maybe just a chance for healing if that's possible. Dad's pride won't let him admit it, but losing you was his greatest regret. He has a strange way of showing regret, I remarked. He's Howard Armstrong. Admitting he was catastrophically wrong doesn't come naturally. I couldn't help a small smile at that. No, I suppose it doesn't. When we returned to the room, my mother was wiping away tears, while my father stared stoically at the ceiling. I should go, I said. I have meetings this afternoon. My mother stood quickly. Will you come back? I looked at my father, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. That depends on whether I'm welcome. Of course you're welcome, my mother insisted. That's not your decision to make, I replied gently. Dad disowned me publicly. Only he can reverse that. My father finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. You made your choice 5 years ago. You chose that company over your family. No, Dad. You forced an unnecessary ultimatum. You made me choose between my dreams and your approval. That was your mistake, not mine. And look where your dream got you, he said bitterly. Forbes magazine $100 million valuation, while Armstrong Developments crumbles. I never wanted the company to fail, I said honestly. I just wanted the freedom to succeed on my own terms. Well, you got what you wanted. He turned away again, effectively dismissing me. I nodded, accepting that some things hadn't changed. Goodbye, Dad. I hope you feel better soon. As I turned to leave, he spoke again, his voice barely audible. The company needs a miracle. I don't suppose your security software works for real estate developers. It was the closest thing to an olive branch he could offer, wrapped in sarcasm and desperation. I paused at the door. Secure Bridge doesn't. But I might know some people who could help stabilize your situation. Not a bailout, but consultation on restructuring debt and operations. We don't need charity, he said reflexively. It's not charity, it's business. Take it or leave it. He didn't answer, but Jackson followed me into the hallway again. He'll take it even if he can't say so. Thank you, Carlene. As I walked to my car, I felt strangely lighter. I hadn't forgiven them exactly, but I had refused to become like them. Maybe that was victory enough. In the months following my hospital visit, I maintained a careful distance from my family, while still offering limited professional assistance. Through my network, I connected Jackson with financial and legal consultants, specializing in corporate restructuring. I made it clear that while I would facilitate introductions, I wouldn't provide direct financial support to Armstrong Developments. The company survived, but emerged significantly downsized, focusing on local projects rather than international ventures. My father stepped down as CEO ostensibly for health reasons, but practically because investors demanded new leadership. Jackson took over a much humbler operation, learning painful but necessary lessons in sustainable growth. Meanwhile, SecureBridge continued its upward trajectory. We expanded into Asia, and Australia opened offices in Singapore and Sydney, and launched an enhanced platform for mid-sized businesses. Our team grew to over 300 employees worldwide, and we were repeatedly recognized for our company culture and innovation. The professional success fulfilled me, but I found greater personal satisfaction in establishing the SecureBridge Foundation, which provided scholarships and mentorship to young women pursuing careers in cybersecurity. The foundation's first initiative was a $10,000 annual scholarship named after my grandmother Dorothy, who had encouraged my interest in technology when no one else did. At the foundation's launch event, I shared my story publicly for the first time, including the family rejection and subsequent journey. The response was overwhelming, with hundreds of women reaching out to share similar experiences of family pressure and career dismissal. What began as a scholarship program expanded into a mentorship network, connecting established female tech leaders with emerging talents. 1 year after my father's stroke, I received a handwritten letter from him delivered by courier to my office. The envelope sat on my desk for 2 days before I found the courage to open it. Inside was a brief note in my father's precise handwriting. Carlene, if you're available, I would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you at your convenience. Howard Armstrong. No apology, no warm sentiments, just a formal request for a meeting. Still, from Howard Armstrong, this was practically begging. After consulting with my therapist, whom I had been seeing to process the complex emotions surrounding my family situation, I agreed to meet him at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my office. He arrived precisely on time, walking with a slight limp, a remnant of his stroke. He had aged considerably, his once commanding presence diminished, but not entirely gone. We exchanged awkward greetings before settling at a corner table. "You look well," he offered, studying me with new eyes. "Success agrees with you." "Thank you," I replied, waiting for him to reveal the purpose of our meeting. He took a deep breath. "I've been advised by my doctor to resolve unfinished business. Apparently, harboring resentments is bad for stroke recovery." "Is that what this is, unfinished business?" "That's not the right term," he admitted. "What I'm trying to say rather poorly is that I was wrong." The words hung between us so unexpected that I wasn't sure I'd heard correctly. "Wrong about what specifically?" I pressed, needing clarity. "Everything concerning you," he said, meeting my eyes directly. "Your career choice, your business acumen, your potential." He paused. "I underestimated you at every turn. I tried to force you into a mold that wasn't designed for you. And when you refused to be confined by my limited vision, I cut you off rather than reconsider my position." It was more acknowledgement than I had ever expected, though still not quite an apology. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm 70 years old and recovering from a stroke that nearly killed me," he said bluntly. "Because I built my life around certain principles that proved fundamentally flawed. Because I lost my daughter for 5 years due to my own stubbornness and pride." I remained silent, processing his words. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he continued. "I'm not even asking for a relationship, though I would welcome one. I simply wanted you to know that I recognize my failure, not as a businessman, but as a father." The vulnerability in his admission was unprecedented. Howard Armstrong had never acknowledged failure of any kind. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "It can't erase the past, but it helps. I also wanted to tell you that I'm proud of what you've built." He added the words clearly difficult for him. "SecureBridge is extraordinary. Your vision was right. Mine was wrong." The validation I had once desperately craved now felt strangely unnecessary. I had long since stopped measuring my worth by his approval. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "But I no longer need your approval to know my value." He nodded, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. "That's the greatest evidence of my failure and your success. You outgrew the need for my validation." We talked for another hour, not as father and daughter reconnecting, but as two business leaders sharing perspectives. He asked thoughtful questions about Secure Bridge's growth strategy and international expansion. I inquired about the restructured Armstrong developments. The conversation was professional, but warmer than any we had shared before. As we prepared to leave, he hesitated. Your mother would like to see you. At your convenience, of course. I'll call her, I promised. And Jackson mentioned you're speaking at the Women in Technology conference next month. He thought he might attend if that wouldn't be unwelcome. The tentative nature of the request, so unlike the demands of the past, touched me unexpectedly. He's welcome to attend. I can arrange a pass. My father nodded, then extended his hand formally. Thank you for meeting with me, Carlene. It means more than I can adequately express. I took his hand, but then, following an impulse I didn't fully understand, leaned in to give him a brief hug. He stiffened in surprise before awkwardly returning the gesture. Over the following months, I established cautious contact with my family. Monthly dinners with my mother at restaurants of my choosing. Occasional professional events with Jackson, who was rebuilding Armstrong developments with a more sustainable approach. Rare, but civil interactions with my father, who remained reserved but respectful of my boundaries. The relationship would never be what it might have been without the rupture, but it evolved into something new, a connection based on mutual respect, rather than obligation or authority. I no longer sought their approval or feared their judgment. They no longer presumed to direct my life or dismiss my choices. My grandmother Dorothy, witnessing this tentative reconciliation, remarked, "Bridges can be rebuilt, but they're never identical to the original structure. Sometimes the new bridge is stronger for having been thoughtfully reconstructed." 2 years after my father's first acknowledgement of his mistakes, I stood on stage at the annual Women in Technology conference, accepting the Lifetime Achievement Award, despite being only 37. As I surveyed the audience of thousands, I spotted my family in the front row, my mother tearfully proud, Jackson genuinely supportive, and my father, who had insisted on attending despite his declining health. My journey began with rejection, I told the audience, being told what I couldn't do, what I shouldn't attempt, what wasn't possible for someone like me. That rejection became my foundation. Each no strengthened my resolve. Each dismissal clarified my vision. I paused, making eye contact with young women throughout the audience. The path to success isn't about proving others wrong, though that can be satisfying. It's about proving yourself right, believing in your vision when no one else does, building something meaningful that solves real problems, creating opportunities for others to follow. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me clutching a copy of my recently published memoir, Building Bridges from Rejection to 100 Million. "Your story changed my life," she said, her voice trembling. "My parents think computer science is a waste of time for girls. They want me to study something more suitable." I smiled, recognizing my younger self in her uncertainty. "What do you want to study? Cybersecurity," she replied. "I want to build something important like you did." "Then do it," I said, signing her book. "The people who truly love you will eventually come around. And if they don't, you'll build a new support system of people who believe in your vision." As she walked away, I reflected on the circular nature of life. My greatest wound had become my greatest strength, my story now inspiring others facing similar challenges. The rejection that once devastated me had become the cornerstone of my success and purpose. That evening, I hosted a small dinner for my family and closest colleagues at my penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Harbor. As conversation flowed around the table, I observed the unlikely gathering, my parents and brother interacting with my executive team, my grandmother chatting with Maya Rodriguez, who had become a close friend as well as an investor. 5 years earlier, I couldn't have imagined this scene. The painful separation had ultimately led to a healthier relationship, one based on who we actually were, rather than who we were expected to be. My success had changed how my family saw me, but more importantly, it had changed how I saw myself. The true victory wasn't the $100 million valuation the magazine covers or the industry awards. It was the internal freedom I had achieved, the knowledge that my worth wasn't determined by family approval or external validation. The journey from rejection to success had taught me that the most important belief is the one you hold in yourself. Have you ever had someone underestimate you, only to later prove them wrong? How did it feel to stand in your truth despite others' doubts? Share your story in the comments below, and let me know if my journey resonated with you. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video if it inspired you to believe in yourself even when others don't. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes being underestimated is your greatest advantage. Until next time, stay true to your vision, no matter who doubts it.